Well, hello again, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of 15-Minute Free Thinking with your host, Carpo. And that's me, and I'm sitting here in my office on a hot day, and I could be outside, but I decided not to because it'll usually be too loud or too hot. I'll hear sirens, I'll hear motorcycles. I can hear all kinds of things out there right now, and that's a great way to start off a video complaining about noise. So, let me get to the point of what I wanted to discuss today, because I've had an interesting week. I've had so many different coincidences, as I would call synchronicities lately, and also deja vu in a new form. Now, I've made videos about deja vu in the past. I've explored it deeply, having to do with dopamine. When I was taking Mucuna pruriens, which is like a bean that grows on a tree, and you take that, and it has a high serotonin content, and L-Dopa, which is a precursor to dopamine. I'm getting way off topic, but dopamine has something to do with deja vu. So dopamine also deals with motivation, not just a motivation chemical, but also helps you deal with danger and aversion to fear or aversion to danger, things like that. It's basically almost like a learning chemical. So when I have deja vu, I start asking what is different in my life and what's going on, and why am I having these weird experiences that I've had before. But then when that's combined with synchronicities, things that are just too weird, it's hard to ignore them. My original response video I started a little while ago, I got interrupted by my son, who was calling me needing to go to 7-Eleven or something, and I put it off for a little bit, went in, made some chili, came in. Before I came in, I turned on TV for some reason, flipped to HBO Max, and I just saw what was on there. And the very first show on there was called Fuckboy Island. Yes, that was the name of it. It was actually called F-Boy Island. And I sat there for a minute thinking, first off, is this how far we've fallen as humans? Not that it's any worse than any of the other garbage that I see every day on the internet. But why is this the very top banner on my feed where I don't ever watch reality shows? And believe me, this will tie in somehow. Because a previous video I was going to talk about the old cigarette ads, and more doctors smoke Chesterfields and Camels, and just how products have always tried to completely fool you into thinking that people are a certain way. But when that moved into the 2000s, reality shows like The Real World and all these other shows came to light. They were all fake. Most of them were completely staged, and to this day, almost every reality show, if not every reality show people watch, is staged. People are coerced into saying certain things. But the more interesting factor is that we're always looking for conflict, and that tells me something about the human, basically the human mind, and our natural tendency to seek conflict. Can that be abolished, or can we be absolved of guilt of being such idiots and fighting about the stupidest things? So I made a video the other day, and it was relating to our competition and cooperation. And one of my subscribers, who I also subscribe to, The Logic Only Zone, left a comment and left the little @ symbol with my channel name, which popped up in my feed as he had mentioned me in a comment, and I realized he'd made a video discussing this, and so this part is for Logic and for the rest of you as well. He was asking, why can't we just have cooperation and no competition? And I wanted to answer this as succinctly as possible, like in my opinion, because I'm ever changing my opinions on these things. But I am very let's say, I used to be more pro-socialist than I am today. I have changed a lot of the ways I see sharing and equality and freedom, because I know a tendency for people to not be lazy. As people say, oh, everybody will just be on welfare. No, I don't believe that. I do believe that competition fosters a healthy motivation to get more done. But it's not about winning. It's not about beating others. There are some people that will take competition to an extreme level. Competition as a tool to learn, just like the same way people will use hammers to murder, or use a gun to defend rather than kill. These kinds of things, each tool can be used in its own way. And that's no different from the tool of competition, which is something you see all around us in nature, of course, but even animals that compete. And this is fascinating to me, that animals are altruistic, not protecting just within their own species, but protecting cross species. Animals will reach out and help other animals and save other animals from dying. They'll pull them out of the water if they're drowning. There is a strange relationship in nature, but there's also a tough love type attitude. Like, there is competition. If you encroach on my anthill, your anthill gets too close, well, there's going to be a battle. And hopefully we walk away relatively unscathed, but ants may die, and that's kind of how it is. With humans, we see it differently. We see the death of a human as an avoidable tragedy. But is it? Or is that part of a bigger understanding? For example, the knowledge that if you do A, you will die. If enough people fall off cliffs and they die, that's horrible. Why does nature do that to us? Why does nature make us die when we fall off cliffs? But then we realize, don't walk too close to the damn edge of the cliff. We have to be smart enough to protect ourselves, but in the same way, when it comes to the competition issue, we need to be able to be competitive, because it's not about winning at the cost of someone else losing. It's about competing not just with others, but with ourselves. And I thought about this because I've talked with, people who are really competitive or love sports. And I've said I'm not a very competitive person, which I'm not, but I thought about I am too at the same time. I love to argue. So if I'm not a competitive person and I love to argue, what is the conundrum here? How do we solve this paradox? And I realized I love competition. I just don't mind losing. And this was kind of a revelation for me personally. Today, I just thought about this earlier. Like, why do I say that I'm not a competitive person? It's because I know so many people get so offended at the drop of a fucking hat. They hear one thing and they think that it's all intended at them. And text is the worst. You're texting with someone, you point something out, and they say, "Oh, you're just a hater." Or like, wait a minute, I'm just talking about the normal shit. But it's just part of being a human that we seem to always expect others to think the same way we do. And when you let go of that and don't care anymore, well, then you realize one of the most important factors in life, that there are two different sets of laws. I should say there's one set of laws, but humans try to go by two. That is two different realities. There's the human reality and the natural reality. In nature, animals fight only as much as they need to, and there's plenty of cooperation as well. But they work. They all work. All animals work. And humans, when we talk about equality and fairness, like with logic, when you were talking about why can't we all just have cooperation, my only question would be something as simple as, what about the one guy that doesn't want to cooperate? Or even worse, what about the 10 guys that don't want to cooperate? Or what about the 100 groups of 10 guys that don't want to cooperate, and then the 10 groups of those guys that don't want to cooperate, which becomes 1 million people who don't want to cooperate, who just want to steamroll over society and take what they want. This is natural. Anytime there's a power vacuum, it gets filled. This is, I think, the key to my argument here. Power vacuums get filled. If there's a fear of the unknown or a fear of somebody else, let's give you an example of the cartels. We hear a lot about the horrendous nature of the cartels. They do some of the worst shit in the world, especially in Mexico. And yet, we label them all with the same color, the same blanket of cartels are killing people. Often it's rival gangs or competition. But at the same time, if these cartels didn't support the towns and the people there and pay for their schools and their food, a lot of these people would starve. So they may be saving more people in the long run through sending drugs to America and getting all these billions of dollars in profits and then buying out a town. They may be saving more people than they're harming. We don't know the underlying numbers of what the benefits are of competition as well. And this was important to me because I thought about how so many things had been invented in the past that weren't done on a competitive basis. They were competing to see who could discover something first, but it wasn't for money, you see. No one lost, everyone won. In that sense, competition was a winner. So I'm going to move on now to the next topic. I hope that addressed a little bit more what I meant by competition. And it's hot, and I was going to make a video outside, but it's hot outside, and I've become very impartial to sirens and noise. And so I'm going to try to get through this in the back office here. Why do I punish myself making a podcast on a Friday afternoon when I could be doing other things? Because it's on my mind, and when I'm thinking about things, I have to talk about them. It's like my release. I can't explain it any other way. So I wanted to move on to why, as humans, when we do have competition, it can become toxic. And I think this would be the main point of my discussion. It has more to do with my discovery that most people prefer drama. You know, when I see a clip from CNN or Fox News and they're just complaining about each other, or look at what this politician did or that one, or look at what the left or the right did, and I think people are petty and shallow. And then I kind of stop myself and say, hey, that's not right, you know. No, they're focused on issues they think are important. No, it's just petty and shallow. Anyone who watches the news every night and actually takes it verbatim and thinks that's what's going on in the world is a shallow, ignorant person by definition. That doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that they're willing to believe propaganda shoved down their throat instead of the fact that the world's more complicated. It's the same ignorance as just believing that the Bible describes everything that the world is about. And I know that will turn a lot of people off, and I'm sure some people will click off this video right now. How dare you talk bad about the Bible? But I'm way beyond giving a damn about offending people over a book that's 2,000 years old when we have modern day problems that are not solved by just taking God's grace and being grateful for, you know, Jesus. It doesn't fly in the modern world. I think philosophy and thinking and processing ideas, that can take us so far, but really we have to go with our hearts, and our hearts tell us that there's something bigger, there's something deeper. And that brings me back to altruism and why we help each other, because we care. We do. But there's something new out there. People are feeling guilty because they don't think a certain way. They don't, you know, they may be helping other people because they want to, but this is, I guess, almost brings to mind like charity shaming. Like, oh, you know, do you want to donate $1 at the grocery store to the starving kids in Japan? No. You know, oh, why not? If you've never seen the South Park episode, which I know most people haven't, it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. It's about charity shaming and, you know, at the checkouts, and just how people... It's such a shallow bullshit attempt to really do anything, and people buy into it because they feel guilted into it. I will not be guilted into anything in my life. I'm very anti-authoritarian in that way. But I want to talk about why people love conflict, because I think this is a crucial aspect of it. What sets us aside from animals who can fight for a minute and then just get over it. Drama is a way for us to find a nemesis. I know plenty of people I've met in my life who just always want an argument, not for the sake of getting to the truth or learning something, but they just want to bitch about something. It's the old drama, the drama queen or drama king attitude. And they want to find a nemesis, because I think that all humans naturally, somehow instinctually, want to find a nemesis, an opponent, an adversary, an antagonist, an enemy, a combatant, a foe, a rival, a villain, an opposition, a prosecution or a prosecutor, a detractor or an invader of your psyche, somebody who's out to get you. And when we find an enemy, whether it be liberals or I just keep seeing these little, like, you know, things on YouTube, these little clips of like, oh, Hunter Biden and Joe Biden is too old, and Hunter Biden did crack, and another one about how Trump incited the riots. And it's like, you know what? All these old guys can just fuck right off. I don't give a damn for any of them. Like, People are so tied up in this bullshit, this trivial bullshit. If you're still arguing over which president is better, fucking get over it and grow up. I think people should realize by now neither party gives a fuck about them. It never has. I mean, maybe before our time, but it's always been about the money. And not everybody is about the money. So, I think that's why it's important for us to focus on the natural. Focus on those natural laws, the things that we can see around us that we actually believe in and can see represented, not by human webs and cast blueprints of what the world wants, but the truth. Space is real big and particles are real tiny, that kind of thing. Like, it's beyond our comprehension. I've always been just fascinated with the size and scope of everything and the fact that we really think our problems mean anything. But ultimately they do to us. And you can't stop that. You can't escape it. You can try to ignore the world. You can try to live your own life, just do your own thing and say, I don't care about human realities. I'm just going to do my own thing. But you just can't look away. It's so crazy. The way things are changing right now, the way we're redefining so many different ideas, it's almost like you can't be asleep at the helm. You've got to be helping steer the ship. It's like all hands on deck kind of thing, Anybody who has any semblance of a rational thought needs to get their fucking head in the ring and start helping, whatever that means. And I still wrestle with that. I believe nature is an ally, or if you want to say an ally, a companion, a friend, a comrade, a partner, a colleague, a cohort, a pal, your buddy. Buddy old pal, pal old buddy. Nature is what you need to work with because that's what you live within. You are part of it and part of the system that we seem to ignore. The human systems we put in place do not represent that natural order. Some places, maybe, but the reason why nature has to be acknowledged is because nature runs life. Nature is life. You have no choice but to exist within it. So you need to stay curious, stay inquisitive, analytical, interested, investigative, open-minded, scrutinizing, skeptical, and most of all, be mentally healthy. Because being mentally healthy and mentally open-minded is the most crucial thing to us acknowledging the mistakes we've made at the same time as learning new things. We can learn a ton overnight if we're willing to change our minds. But if we're reading something or listening to something with a biased mind, we've instantly lost 100% of what we're learning because we're ignoring it due to our own biases. So if we look at everything through that lens of natural law and competition and order, we realize it's not a bad thing. It's, in a way, acknowledging that life is way too interesting on its own merit. I mean, I don't need human drama to make life interesting. I'm always amazed that people are willing to sit around and watch reality shows as if learning about, some crazy spider in the outback isn't just as interesting. It's not, because these are humans. These are human situations. But they're not. They're fake. But we're willing to look at it and watch fake bullshit because we're more interested in distracting ourselves than actually educating ourselves. And I know that sounds pious or arrogant, as if, well, I learn things and other people watch reality television, but I feel that way. I do. I feel like there's a lot of dumbass motherfuckers out there, and we owe it to ourselves and others to learn about our world and be better people, because we will suffer if we don't know how nature operates, and because of that, we will act like jerks and treat others in our life like jerks, end up being the abusers, the people society doesn't want around. But things are complicated, and to back up, when I asked Logic, I mentioned something earlier about what do we do about the people who don't want to cooperate. That brings me into prisons and jails and police, and the original discussion I was going to have here was about that issue that happened in Texas with the school kids, and I'm just so disgusted with that. I'm so disgusted, but at the same time fascinated with the groupthink that would cause, 9 officers to show up in full, bulletproof vests and everything else and shields, and then proceed to wait for an entire hour before saving children. Fully trained men with shields and ballistics vests and guns protecting kids who have absolutely nothing, who are crying and bleeding out. Like, this just, you can't even discuss it because it's so dark and it's so deep. But it was just a fascinating look into how our system has just totally failed the people. And only through these major disasters can we see that. Look what happened with COVID. Look at how badly we mangled the country, throwing out checks and shutting down businesses. At the time, I wanted to talk about it. I've been taking notes about COVID the whole time and, screenshotting various, news articles and making videos. I've got a crap load of footage of everything locked down and playgrounds with caution ribbon. I said, one day I'm going to use this. But for right now, I can't talk about it because YouTube will censor it. And that's the final aspect here, is that you can't even see the full reality because everything does get censored. So we live in a weird time, and I think it's important for us to take initiative in our own lives. And the Great Reset, as people have called it, a lot of folks are, not just conspiracy-oriented people, but rational people. It seems like leaders around the country, around the world, are trying to kind of restart and change how things operate, right? And they call it the Great Reset. And I thought I would just put an N in there, the Great Resent, because the truth is, it's a great resent. A lot of people are starting to resent leadership and resent how things work. Without the people, you don't have a reset. Without the people caring about the future and thinking that they have a future, nothing will ever get accomplished. You can't force people into some 1984 future. It just doesn't work. People are too smart for that. But are they? Politics these days are like one of those cash grab machines. The ones you step into and the air blows for a certain amount of time and you grab as many dollar bills as you can, and when it turns off, your time's up. I thought of that today as just the perfect metaphor for what it means to step into office for 4 years. Just get as many deals as you can, figure out what you can do for yourself. Just imagine if people cared about the people they claim to represent. But the fact is they don't, and they haven't for a long time. And I only bring up politics to say, if we keep focusing on what our leaders should do for us, we're never going to do anything for ourselves. Don't wait for the next Republican or Democrat president. Don't wait for the fire department to bail you out or the cops to save you from a home intruder. Arm yourself, protect yourself, deal with your own problems. Start growing your own food if you can. If you live in an area where there's low on certain foods, try to grow it in your garden. Do whatever you can to protect yourself and your assets, because damn it, we can't depend on anybody else to do it for ourselves. Because if people lose hope, it's chaos. Complete chaos. And I feel like we're on the verge of that. History repeats itself. These archetypes and allegories that through history have continued to plague humanity or benefit humanity, depending. But to finalize this, I guess, on the note of a utopia, because I have discussed this idea of a perfect world where people care about one another and we don't need to compete and we don't need to fight, don't need to defend ourselves, where we can walk the streets without worrying about being attacked. We cannot restructure the world, or even our country or a state or a city or even a community, if we can't all agree on our wants. And I don't think that we will ever agree on our wants, because being ourselves is unique to each person. Our values are unique to each person. But there are certain common threads we have. Even if you're an atheist or you're a Christian, it doesn't matter. You still have the belief that treating people with respect is the right thing to do, until they see each other in that light and stop taking the extreme cases of horrible Christians and horrible atheists. Stop looking at what other people believe. Start looking at intentions, because intentions are ultimately the best way to understand the world. What do people intend? We can educate people if their intentions were right, but the results were wrong. But we can't educate people if their intentions were bad. So, trust your intuition. There are a lot of people out there who do not care about you and do not care about anyone else. They will always exist. There will always be sociopaths, psychopaths. There will always be horrible people. But we don't have to make that at the forefront of our discussions about life, about politics, about religion. We can just say most people are pretty fucking cool, and life is pretty awesome. And when I go out and talk to people in my daily life, I don't get interactions generally like I do online. None of us really do. There's very few people who talk like that, because when you're face to face and you look someone in the eye, your intention shows. And that, my friend, is why we need more connections and more face-to-face contact. And thanks for listening. I'll talk to you all next time. This was another 15-minute free thinking podcast that turned into 26 minutes. But if you want to contribute to the podcast, visit me on Patreon, where I link some extras. And that's Carpo719. And if you're watching this on YouTube, check out the podcast. It's called 15-Minute Free Thinking. And if you're listening to the podcast, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, Carpo719. And I will talk to you all next time. Have an amazing fucking day. And make sure you visit Fuckboy Island. Peace out.